I don't know if you have a good answer for this, but people love it when I ask this question about books. Are there books in your life that you've enjoyed, philosophical, fiction, technical, that had a big impact on you as an engineer or as a human being? Everything from science fiction to a favorite textbook. Is there three books that stand out that you can think of?
Three books. So I would, that impacted me. I would say, and this one is you probably know it well, but not generally well known. I think in the U.S. or kind of internationally, The Master and Margarita. It's one of actually my favorite books. It is by a Russian. It's a novel by a Russian author, Mikhail Bulgakov, and it's a great book. It's one of those books that you can like reread your entire life, and it's very accessible. You can read it as a kid, and like the plot is interesting. It's the devil visiting the Soviet Union, and but it like you read it, reread it at different stages of your life, and you enjoy it for very different reasons, and you keep finding like deeper and deeper meaning, and kind of affected, definitely had an like imprint on me, mostly from the probably kind of the cultural stylistic aspect. Like it makes you one of those books that is good and makes you think, but also has like this really silly, quirky, dark sense of humor.
Yeah, it captures the Russian soul more than perhaps many other books. On that like slight note, just out of curiosity, one of the saddest things is I've read that book in English. Did you by chance read it in English or in Russian?
In Russian, only in Russian. And I actually, that is a question I had kind of posed to myself every once in a while. Like, I wonder how well it translates, if it translates at all. And there's the language aspect of it, and then there's the cultural aspect. So I'm not sure if either of those would work well in English.
Now I forget their names, but so when the COVID lifts a little bit, I'm traveling to Paris. For several reasons. One is just I've never been to Paris. I want to go to Paris. But there's the most famous translators of Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, of most of Russian literature live there. There's a couple. They're famous, a man and a woman. And I'm going to sort of have a series of conversations with them. And in preparation for that, I'm starting to read Dostoevsky in Russian. So I'm really embarrassed to say that I've read everything I've read of Russian literature of like serious depth has been in English. Even though I can also read, obviously in Russian, but for some reason it seemed in the optimization of life, it seemed the improper decision to read in Russian. Like, like I don't need to, I need to think in English, not in Russian. But now I'm changing my mind on that. And so the question of how well it translates is a really fundamental one. Like even with Dostoevsky. So from what I understand, Dostoevsky translates easier. Others don't as much. Obviously the poetry doesn't translate as well. I'm also the music, big fan of Vladimir Vysotsky. He doesn't obviously translate well. People have tried. But Master Margaret, I don't know. I don't know about that one. I just know it in English. It's fun as hell in English. So, but it's a curious question, and I want to study it rigorously from both the machine learning aspect and also because I want to do a couple of interviews in Russia that I'm still unsure of how to properly conduct an interview across a language barrier. It's a fascinating question that ultimately communicates to an American audience. There's a few Russian people that I think are truly special human beings. And I feel like I sometimes encounter this with some incredible scientists, and maybe you encounter this as well at some point in your life, that it feels like because of the language barrier, their ideas are lost to history. It's a sad thing. I think about like Chinese scientists or even authors that we don't, in an English speaking world, don't get to appreciate some like the depth of the culture because it's lost in translation. And I feel like I would love to show that to the world. Like I'm just some idiot, but because I have this like at least some semblance of skill in speaking Russian. I feel like, and I know how to record stuff on a video camera. I feel like I want to catch like Grigory Perelman, who's a mathematician. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Mhm.
Yeah, I want to talk to him. Like he's a fascinating mind, and to bring him to a wider audience in English speaking will be fascinating. But that requires to be rigorous about this question of how well Bulgakov translates. I mean, I know it's a silly concept, but it's a fundamental one, because how do you translate? And that's the thing that Google Translate is also facing
Yeah.
as a more machine learning problem. But I wonder, as a more bigger problem for AI, how do we capture the magic that's there in the language?
I think that's a really interesting, really challenging problem. If you do read it, Master and Margarita in English, in Russian, I'd be curious to get your opinion. And I think part of it is language, but part of it's just centuries of culture that the cultures are different, so it's hard to connect that. But, okay, so that was my first one, right? You had two more. The second one, I would probably pick the science fiction by the Strugatsky brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It's up there with Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury and company. The Strugatsky brothers kind of appealed more to me. I think it made more of an impression on me growing up. I
apologize if I'm showing my complete ignorance. I'm so weak on sci-fi. What do they write?
Roadside Picnic. Hard to Be a God. Beetle in an anthill. Monday Starts on Saturday. Like it's not just science fiction. It's also like has very interesting, interpersonal and societal questions, and some of the language is just completely hilarious.
Понедельник начинается суббота. That's the one.
That's right.
Oh, interesting. Monday starts on Saturday. So I need to read. Okay. Oh boy, you put that in the category of science fiction.
That one is. I mean, this was more of a silly, humorous work. I mean, there is kind of.
But it's profound too, right?
It's science fiction, right? It's about this research institute, and like it has deep parallels to like serious research, but the setting, of course, is that they're working on magic, right? And there's a lot of so and that's their style, right? They go and other books are very different, right? Hard to Be a God, right? It's about kind of this higher society being injected into this primitive world and how they operate there, like some of the very deep ethical questions there, right? And like they've got this full spectrum. Some is more about kind of more adventure style, but like I enjoy all of their books. There's probably a couple, actually one I think that they considered their most important work. I think it's The Snail on a Hill. I don't know exactly how it translates. I tried reading a couple of times. I still don't get it, but everything else I fully enjoyed. And like for one of my birthdays as a kid, I got like their entire collection, like occupied a giant shelf in my room. And then like over the holidays, I just like, my parents couldn't drag me out of the room, and I read the whole thing cover to cover, and I really enjoyed it. And that's the one more. For the third one, maybe a little bit darker, but comes to mind is Orwell's 1984. And you asked what made an impression on me and the books that people should read. That one I think falls in the category of both. Definitely is one of those books that read and you just kind of put it down and you stare in space for a while. That kind of work. I think there's lessons there people should not ignore, and nowadays with like everything that's happening in the world, I can't help it but have my mind jump to some parallels with what Orwell described, and like this whole concept of double think and ignoring logic and holding completely contradictory opinions in your mind and not have that not bother you, and sticking to the party line at all costs. Like there's something there.
If anything, 2020 has taught me, and I'm a huge fan of Animal Farm, which is a kind of friendly, as a friend of 1984 by Orwell. It's kind of another thought experiment of how our society may go in directions that we wouldn't like it to go. But if anything, that's been kind of heartbreaking to an optimist about 2020 is that society is kind of fragile. Like we have this is a special little experiment we have going on, and it's not unbreakable. Like we should be careful to like preserve whatever the special thing we have going on. I mean, I think 1984 and these books, Brave New World, they're helpful in thinking like stuff can go wrong in non-obvious ways, and it's like it's up to us to preserve it. And it's like it's a responsibility. It's been weighing heavy on me because like for some reason like more than my mom follows me on Twitter, and I feel like I have like now somehow a responsibility to this world. And it dawned on me that like me and millions of others are like the little ants that maintain this little colony, right? So we have a responsibility not to be I don't know what the right analogy is, but put a flamethrower to the place. We want to not do that. And there's interesting, complicated ways of doing that, as 1984 shows. It could be through bureaucracy, it could be through incompetence, it could be through misinformation, it could be through division and toxicity. I'm a huge believer in like that love will be somehow the solution. So love and robots.
Love and robots, yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. Unfortunately, I think it's less of a flamethrower type of exercise. I think it's more of in many cases can be more of a slow boil, right? And that's the danger.